Welcome back to another episode of Big Lap Chats. And today, my guest, I don't have any guests. It's the reason I am recording this interview by myself is I've had a number of people writing to me asking questions. Why don't I answer the questions that I ask? So that's what today's episode is all about. It's all about planning a lap of Australia. Some of the questions are before you leave and some of them are for after you leave. And I guess before I kick off, I should introduce myself to people who haven't heard the podcast before and don't know who All Around Oz is or who I am. So I'm Annette. I run the website All Around Oz, also two Facebook groups. One is Planning a Lap of Australia, hints and tips, and the other one is Caravanning for Newbies. My partner and I, Kev, have been on the road now for 2 years, just over 2 years, and we've covered most states of Australia. The only state we haven't travelled to is Tasmania, and we haven't been to the ACT either. So they're definitely on our lists, but that's a story for another day. I'm recording this episode in a place called Mount Magnet in WA. It's in outback WA and it's part of the Goldfields. So we've travelled from Kalgoorlie all across through Sandstone and now to Mount Magnet, and we're just hanging out here because we're in school holidays and we often get caught out. So we're just hanging inland. After school holidays, we'll hit the coast around Geraldton. Then we'll start heading south once it warms up. Our setup, if you don't know, we have a 20'6" urban X-terrain caravan that we've specced up to the extreme model. If you're familiar with urban caravans, if not, go check them out. They're a great brand. We're really happy with our van. And a Y62 Patrol. We've been wanting to travel Australia for many years now, but unless you set a firm date, what we found is life gets in the way. There's always something going on in your life that stops you. That segues into the first question that I always ask my guest, and that's what's one of the most things lappers overlook that could make or break their journey. And I tend to think that's not setting a date. One day, maybe, we'd like to, all those sorts of things. So when you get serious about planning a lap, that's when you really should set a date. And the seriousness, I don't think, comes first. It's the dreaming that comes first. And then that leads to the seriousness of, yeah, we're definitely going to do this. And once you get to there, that's when you must put a date in concrete and stick to it, because life will happen and it gets in the way, and there'll always be something. It'll be someone's birthday, or there'll be a big event that you want to attend, or there'll be a concert in your hometown, or there'll be something. Set that date in stone or in concrete and work towards it. The next question that I ask my guests is, what's your secret to finding the most breathtaking yet completely under the radar destinations? We use Wikicamps a lot. We read the reviews. We take them with a grain of salt, because really, when you read a review, there's always fors and against. So there's a lot of people saying how great a place is, and then there's another lot of people saying it was terrible, or this wasn't right, or that wasn't right. That tends to be our starting point. But we generally don't plan exactly where we're going. Like we've known now since last year that we're going to be heading to WA this year to spend the rest of this year and most of next year exploring WA. But as for bookings and things like that, we tend not to do that. Like at the moment, we don't have a booking for Geraldton, and that's where we're heading. We start looking maybe a day or two at the most out from where we are, and then we'll look where we're going to go, and then we'll start looking around to see where's the closest town, what's the best free camp, those sorts of things, with that big picture in mind. For example, we knew we were coming to WA. We knew we had to cross the Nullarbor, but still we didn't make any real sort of plans that were set in concrete. We only like to generally travel 2 to 3 hours on what we call a travel day. So we normally start packing up about 9:30 in the morning, get on the road by 10, and then we like to get off the road by 1. If it's a big travel day, it's normally about 2 or maybe even 3 at the latest. I don't think we've ever travelled in the dark or at dawn or dusk, because I think everyone knows that that's the worst time that you can travel for animals on the road and chances of accidents with them. We're in no rush. We're not on a set time frame, and I do understand if you've only got X amount of time to do a lap. And for most people, that's about 12 months. So your planning might be a little bit different to mine and Kev's, but that's how we do it. And a lot of times we have been on the way to a destination that we think, oh yeah, that we're going to stay there the night, and something happens along the way and we end up staying somewhere else. So that's why we like to keep our plans fairly loose and wing it a lot of the time. The next question that I ask, what are the 3 biggest money-saving hacks every lapper needs to know before hitting the road? General ones like using fuel apps, especially when you know where you're heading. There's going to be a fluctuation in prices. So again, for example, we've just crossed the Nullarbor, so we were forever monitoring where we would and wouldn't fill up or top up. We tended I don't think we went from empty to full at all. We chose places based on the price at the time and pulled in there and topped up. If you want to see those posts, they're on our Facebook feed and Instagram feed, where I've given you a rundown of where we stayed, where we topped up, and the petrol prices at the time. Bearing in mind that we have a petrol car, we don't have a car that takes diesel, but we like to fill up with 98 when we're towing. Crossing the Nullarbor, though, we didn't have a choice. It was 91 all the way, and if you're wondering how the car performed, it was fine. It towed a little bit more sluggishly, I guess you would call it, and sort of changed back through the gears a lot more often than it normally does when we're running 98. And if you fill up with premium diesel, it's around about the same price as 98. That's one money-saving hack. The second one would be use a cryovac machine and your freezer more often. Some butchers, if you go to a butcher, they'll cryo for you. They might charge you, I don't know, I've never had to ask because we've got our own cryovacuum machine, or vacuum sealer, I should call it. Cryovac machines are normally the big things that you see in supermarkets and delis. If you're buying in bulk, all you need to do is get a vacuum sealer and vacuum seal your own meat. That way you can keep it in the fridge for a long, long time. It varies from protein to protein. I have a blog post all about vacuum sealers, and in that post it gives you the details of how long protein lasts when you vacuum seal it. Another hack for on the road, not necessarily money related, but if you have an item of food that you really like, can't live without, then make sure that you stock up with that if you're going out back, because sometimes you can't find every single item that normally sits in your pantry. For example, we left to head into Outback Queensland. We were in Emerald, I think it was, and had a chance there to stock up at Woolies, thinking, it'll be fine. We got to Longreach, went to the IGA there, and they didn't have a particular milk that I drink, soy milk, some bonsai soy milk, and we weren't able to get that for about 6 weeks while we travelled all the way through Outback Queensland up to the Gulf area and then across the Savannah Way into Mareeba and Atherton. If there's an item like that, then stock up. So now I always keep at least 2 or 3 of those in the pantry. Another money-saving hack is if you're not set up for free camping or off-grid camping, then you can always look at low-cost camping. So you're looking at things like showgrounds, RV stops in country towns, and we found those to be fantastic. We stayed at one in between Port Augusta and Ceduna called Wadena, and they even supplied power and water, and I think it was $20 a night. So you're not going to find those in the popular areas, of course, but you might find a showground or even a racetrack. We stayed out at the racetrack at Broken Hill, and it was a beautiful spot. It had lovely green grass, which was a real treat coming through outback South Australia at the time when we travelled there. So there are a few ideas if you want to keep your costs down as well. The next question I ask is, if I could give one piece of advice to someone planning their first lap of Australia, what would it be? And I covered that in the first question, I think, by saying set a date. Really, really important. Set a date, stick to it. What's the biggest myth about travelling around Australia that needs to be busted right now? It's nothing like you see on Instagram. Instagram is a highlight reel. So it's all the best bits. And as beautiful as they look, you do get days where, well, one of the reasons why I'm recording today is where we are at the moment. It started off cold, raining, and only now, and it's late afternoon and the sun's out. Those days are beautiful when you're up north, but there again, you might get a day where it's terribly windy and you can't go outside. That, I think, is not all days sunshine and rainbows. That's how I see it. That's one of the biggest myths I think about travelling, is that every day is going to be perfect. It's not, because you are living in a tin can. The next question I ask is, how do you stay connected and productive on the road without sacrificing the adventure? This was an adjustment time for me when we first hit the road, because I was used to having set days at home where I would work most days. I'd put out a certain amount of content in a certain format every single week, and I was trying to do that as well as fitting in our travel days, as well as being in a town, seeing things and exploring the town and enjoying where we were. So for me, that took about 2 to 3 months before we kind of settled into some sort of routine. And likewise, when I started this podcast too, I was sort of interviewing people here, there and everywhere, whereas now interview on Thursdays, so it's out for the next Thursday. What I like to do is have a bank of episodes. If for some reason that we are travelling on that Thursday, then I'm covered and you don't miss out. And staying productive, I think it's just like when you're at home. How do you stay productive at home? It's the same sort of thing. It's habits. Some people say motivation, but motivation is kind of more of an external thing. I think you need to set really good habits and good work habits and ethics. And if you say you're going to do something, do it and get it done, and then you can tick it off. That's what I find works for me. The next question is, and it's the final question, is what's the one tip that saved you bacon on the road and we've never shared it online? I can honestly say we've never had an incident that's been troubling to us in any way, and I think that comes with being prepared, like fully prepared and set up properly for the type of travel that you want to do. We know we can stay off-grid for as long as we like. The only thing that would send us back to a town would be water. Before you travel, you need to sit down and work out what type of travel that you want to do, whether you're happy staying on the bitumen and staying in caravan parks, or whether you want to do low-cost camping, or whether you want to do as much free camping. All those reasons for camping will have slightly different setups. We knew before we took off around Australia what sort of camping that we'd like to do. We'd like to do as much free camping as we like. Yes, to save money, but for the solitude and the beauty of nature, rather than being lined up in a caravan park next to other caravans all the time. We tend to duck into a caravan park for a couple of days and do the washing and catch up on all those sorts of things, rather than juggle water fill-ups and things like that. Mainly because we haven't had to do that. If we had to do it, yeah, we'd do it, no problems at all. For all the notes and items that I've referred to in this episode, I'll make sure that I have them in the show notes so you can access them from the All Around Oz website. If you're listening to this podcast and you'd like to be interviewed, let me know. I'll pop a link in the show notes where you can go to the website, fill out a form, and it'll come to me and I'll get in touch that way. Or you might have your favourite YouTuber or Instagrammer or someone that's travelling around Australia at the moment that you'd like me to interview. And you can do the same. You can follow the links that I'll have in the show notes and the form will come to me and I'll get in touch with them. Thanks very much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode.
Thanks for tuning in to Big Lap Chats. We hope today's episode helped you take another step towards planning your lap of Australia. And if you're already on the road, we hope you picked up some great tips on where to stay and what to see and do along the way. If you found it helpful, we'd love your feedback. Head over to allaroundoz.com.au/podcast, where you can also download the show notes and find more resources to help with your journey. We'll be back next week with more tips and stories about caravanning, camping, and planning your lap of Australia. Until then, happy travels.